Hey, what's up guys? And so I wanted to go ahead and talk about my rally trap, because as you can tell I got my leader lost, and it happened just this night, and I thought, you know what, might as well make a video about it. So I'm going to tell you the recipe for a rally trap that I think works, and frankly, I'm going to just say this now. Alright, let's begin with the fact that I was not rally trap might, alright? I was like 584 million mites, so this is not by any means a trap that I think most people would have even have thought was possible, let alone, really, is it a trap? Well, look, simply put, alright, right from the get-go, they already know that I am not anti-scouted, okay? So, for one thing, I put myself in the most vulnerable position possible. Have no war gear on, in case you're wondering, I had familiar gear on, alright? I popped a set of talents, okay, that were basically set up to increase the 3 attack stats, and then I put, you know, where you've got health 2 at the bottom, I put 50 into that, alright? And now, granted, I did have all army attack heroes, except they weren't HP based in 2 of them, okay? And the other thing I will say is that I was in Cat Phalanx. Alright, but to get into the nitty gritty of what I say will make this trap work and the way that it works is that you've got to have 24 million strength. If you want to see the guide, I'll have it in the description below, but essentially this is what I know will work. And this is how I know that it will work now. Because obviously now that I'm zeroed, I will rebuild it again. I'm not sweating that at all. It only took me 2 months, guys, to build it, so I'm not flipping shit. I will build it again. But, alright, for what it's worth, the initial hit with with a little over like 400,000 to 500,000 just in reinforcements, I took only 468,000 into the wound. I mean, really, I could have, if I was online, I could have repetitively sat there and healed every single time, and it would have done absolute squat. Wouldn't have done a damn thing. All right, now I'm sure you're probably wondering, well, what's this look like, right? Okay, remember, I have people out there who are telling me right away that you cannot do a rally trap without 2 million tier 4. I think you can actually get away with it at 1.5 million to 1.6. I think, to be fair, I think if you really, really want to do it well, you need to be at 1.6 million or higher, preferably somewhere between that 1.6 to 1.8 bracket. Because when I ate this march right off the bat, okay, mind you, they were not in the right phalanx, and so they ended up, obviously, again, packing some of the better heroes that they could throw at me, but they pretty much lost the entirety of that march, with the exception of only a few of these destroyers got away, and that was the only reason why I didn't cap the leader on that march. Now, mind you, okay, the second march they sent, okay, they went infantry phalanx again, and again, even on that, I only had 700k on the wounds there. I had a 700k infantry, okay, so that would have only been 30k wounded, and that wasn't even when... Anyways, so essentially, with that being said, right, I just want to go ahead and kind of show you, because again, here, he sends one troop type, purely range, okay? And with a full range march, it still comes completely flat. And mind you, this is an infantry phalanx that he threw at me. He's got these kind of heroes, and yet didn't really do squat. And he even, again, phalanx counter here seems to work pretty darn well. Now, this is what I will say. You'll notice that when he sent this march, he didn't put any infantry in here. I think this is part of the reason why, and you'll see why here in a bit. Because now, if you look at the next march that Pikachu sends at me, again, the same result, and only 400,000 wounds. And again, you're looking at this, alright, and you can see the same mistake has been made. No 2 unit types, all range, and still, again, the same result. Tons of dead. Not very, it's not looking good for them. And this is, after a couple rallies, mind you, okay? Alright, now if you look at the next march, alright, now this is where you can see now it's gone downhill, right? Because at this point, what you'll notice is changed here is that Phalanx is now a Cav Wedge versus a Cav Phalanx. Okay, but most importantly, you'll notice that now that they've made that decision, They're now putting 2 into the other slots, and now they're starting to carve into my actual cavalry, which is not good, right? Because at this point now they've got the counter that they need to use to get through the march. But at this point, guys, what I'm trying to get at is that the cookie cutter version of what I'm suggesting you build up seems to work. Because at only 400,000 wounds, in theory, had I just continued to heal, and mind you, I wasn't familiar gear, okay? If I had switched over to war gear, there's no telling if they would have even gotten close. They more than likely would have not even gotten anywhere close to killing all of my troops. Granted, I was offline, I was asleep, so there's really nothing I could do about it at the time, but I mean, hell, looking at this march, again, the same exact kind of result, you know, and this guy, I think, you know, he just kept throwing range at me, thinking, you know, it'll at some point do something, but it just kept rolling over him. Again and again and again, they kept making those mistakes over and over and over. Granted, you know, the losses here, you know, it's definitely pretty high. Like, it's a ridiculous amount of troops, and the wounds here are pretty high, but even having that said, okay, the next march, you know, again, it's still huge amounts of might being dropped out for what they put into it. It just is an enormous amount of expense that they put on themselves to try and go through this. And again, at this point, you know, they got through my drakes. And so at this point, you know, the actual cost on me is already all the way to the current drain. You know, it's not something I think a lot of you guys out there are probably going to look at and say, yeah, that kind of sucked. Well, yeah, obviously. Okay. But that's what happens when you're not online, is, you know, stuff happens, especially when, you know, you make mistakes. But look, the point is, though, okay, at this point, you know, it basically starts to curve over, you know. So to this point, I've been doing pretty well, but now we're starting to get into where I'm starting to take a pretty heavy loss, you know. And at this point, you know, the deads here are it ain't getting pretty, okay. It's just going to continuously get worse, okay, so you can tell. But I mean, still, I feel like for what I get out of this, okay, at least from information versus losses, hey, not a big deal. Because again, at this point, you know, it's pretty much downhill. Like, I'm losing tons of troops, and there's nothing pretty about this. However, interestingly enough, right, there is a point where they, again, kind of screw this up. So they send all drakes, but then they run into range. So they start taking heavy losses there. So, you know, again, it's not as if, you know, it's all gravy all the way through. And even at one point, somebody tries to solo me, which I kind of caught that by surprise, you know. And so there was a lot of tier 3 that got thrown out for really nothing. I'm not really sure why, you know, but. And of course, you know, another march that, again, clears out a lot of my troops. And again, if, you know, you want to look at it, I'll show you. Just because, you know, at this point, it doesn't really matter to me. You know, granted, it only took me 2 months to build this up. All right. I will more than likely build this all the way back up again. All right. And that's pretty much it. You know, at this point, I pretty much got zeroed out. Don't have any more troops, and my leader was capped. But now all I can tell you is, all right, is that from my perspective, all right, had I been online, this is the comp that seems to work. All right, you want to keep your tier 3s down to, like, you know, anywhere from like 100 to 500k. I chose to do like 500,000 tier 3, and that really didn't seem to harm, and it really didn't harm my situation any, really, because at this point I'm just taking tier 2 wounds, and it's not like, you know, it's marginal, all right, compared to what, you know, what would have happened. Okay, I think if there was anything that I could have done differently, all right, is that you could have probably made off with like maybe 100 or so, maybe even 200,000 tier 3 across, and then rather than do that, bring up your tier 4 account by about another 100k or 200k, so put like 1.8, 1.9, because I feel like, you know, for in my situation, right, these guys are not packing full champ gear, so they're not packing anything that's like ungodly high. All right. Yeah, they're popping, gold gear and stuff, but nothing that, I would say would have been, out of your scare zone. But yeah, needless to say, that's pretty much it for the reports and everything. Of course, guys, how do I expect to rebuild this? It only took me 2 months. How the hell are you going to do it again? Believe me, there is a way to actually work your way back up. So my current solution now is going to be getting Hellrider maxed and Hoarder maxed. Because I'll tell you the truth, this is how I believe you can get back up to that kind of tier 4 count. Now, luckily, I was able to save a good chunk of my tier 2s, which, that's the luxury of having infirmaries, guys. It doesn't save your tier 4, it saves the units that are the weakest that die first. So, hey, I've got the start to to the trap already. I've already got, 700k of it already ready to go, and I just got to rebuild it. Oh, well, no big deal. Anyway, needless to say, though, of course, because of extra supplies, I'm not hurting on resources a whole lot. It's a good chunk of it gone, but I could still retain a good chunk of it. Obviously, the one problem, obviously, whenever you get zeroed is a lot of you guys out there. I think you take a huge, massive loss like that, and you're probably like, oh. Like, you just, a small pit of your stomach is falling out. And believe me, I understand that feeling, but the reason why I'm not fretting over this, okay, is that at the end of the day, I now know how I can build up this rally trap and do it again. And for me, it's a challenge, okay? I build troops to lose them, like they get built and then I just build them again, It's not like I'm gonna sweat over this, okay? I think a lot of you guys out there, you gotta have some motivation to look forward, all right? You really can't look at the negative. Because at the end of the day, there's always something more to learn from. And for me, this is obviously a learning experience. What not to do when you've got your troops out, not anti-scouted, not in war gear, and you're not awake. Now, I will say that there are a couple of things that I want to break down that I do think IGG could improve, which is my phone did not warn me when an anti-scout occurred, and it also didn't warn me when I was attacked. And I've noticed this problem pretty frequently now, and I'm beginning to think that there's just something wrong. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that's noticed this, but I've just never gotten an update on my phone at all when it comes to getting scouted or attacked. I really don't fully understand why, but I don't know. I thought, that might be something that they may want to consider taking a look at. Obviously, we don't really know. I mean, obviously, I don't know how many of you guys have had that happen to you, but needless to say, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned something. Obviously, take a look at the guide below. It's Alpha Smurf's guide, all right, but it's the cookie cutter blueprint that I used to make this, and I'm pretty positive now that the ballpark might number there is correct, so long as you match what that might number is, which is like 24 million strength, and you apply the frontline to anti-frontline mechanic correctly. I think as long as you're online and you pop your war gear, I think you're freaking invincible, really. Because at 400k wounds on familiar gear, all right, guys. Can you imagine what I could have done if I had been in war gear? Or popped a 70% attack boost, or God knows what else. Anyway, needless to say, I'll see you guys next time.